33 years before the Battle of Yavin, Ahsoka Tano was found by Jedi Master Plo Koon on the planet Sheely. She would live out her childhood on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple until Yoda appointed her to the infamous Anakin Skywalker. Yoda would pair the two as a test for both the Padawan and the Master. Ahsoka had a natural talent for the Force, something she shared with her master, and Anakin needed to learn responsibility and how to let go of his attachments. Tano and Skywalker would go on many missions together during the Clone Wars, with Ahsoka making a prominent name for herself throughout her many campaigns. However, Ahsoka would be framed for bombing the Jedi Temple and murdering Letta Termond. Eventually, Tano would clear her name, as it was her friend Barriss Offee who was responsible for the attacks. Still, the young Togruta lost faith in the Jedi Order, leaving her master and the war behind, never to return again. Xanatos was a human male born 69 years before the Battle of Yavin, to the rich world of Telos IV. His father, Cryon, was the richest man on the planet, taking power for himself through his wealth rather than his technical prowess. Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn discovered Xanatos at the age of 3. Jinn was initially reluctant to take the boy, but Cryon encouraged Xanatos' training, as he thought having a Jedi in the family would be very useful for his future plans. The Jedi counselors were also very wary of Xanatos and his training, sensing the innate dark side within him. Their suspicions would soon be realized. Yoda would send Qui-Gon and Xanatos on one more mission before his knighting, one final test. They were to return to Telos IV, where Xanatos' homeworld was on the brink of civil war. Xanatos would be reunited with his father Cryon once more. Eventually, Qui-Gon and his colleague Tal would uncover that the civil war was instigated by Xanatos' father. Even so, Xanatos sided with his father, falling to the dark side. For years, Xanatos would bide his time, building his own empire through his corporation Offworld. The fallen Jedi would attempt to find more power wherever he went. On Bondomir, he attempted to extort their rich mines. On Coruscant, he infiltrated the Jedi Temple. And on Telos IV, he attempted to take his father's place as the reigning leader. But Qui-Gon Jinn and his new apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi, would be there to stop him every time. Ultimately, they cornered him on Telos IV, where Xanatos would take his own life, falling into an acid pit. As with all my videos, I'll be examining these characters at their primes. This does not always mean their prime age, but their prime in regards to their lightsaber and force abilities. For Ahsoka, this would be near the tail end of the Clone Wars. As a side note for Tano, this is an observation of her abilities as a Padawan learner, as it would be far too speculative to say what her skill level would have been after that point. For Xanatos, his prime would be during his infiltration of the Jedi Temple, as depicted in the Captive Temple. At the age of 17, Ahsoka Tano stood at around 5 feet 3 inches. As a teenage Togruta, she would have a lot of dexterity. In combat, she favored flips and speedy dodges over strength-based attacks, often using acrobatics to outmaneuver her opponents. Her use of Ataru would also play into her gymnastic strengths. Ataru was, after all, one of the most physically boisterous styles of Jedi combat. But most of all, her greatest strength would come in her biology. All Togrutas had hollow montral headtails, which allowed them to sense movement around their proximity. However, according to the Clone Wars visual guide, a Togruta's headtail did not develop until the end of their adolescence. This would not make much of a difference for Tano, as she was nearly a full-grown Togruta, but it is still worth noting. She would have extended senses for her surroundings, but not to the extent of someone of her species like Shakti. Still, Ahsoka's youthful dexterity and natural biology, coupled with her force perception and force augmentation, made her a competent physical opponent. At the age of 25, Xanatos was at his species' physical prime. Thanks mostly to his youthful grace and his training in Ataru tactics, he too would be nimble and spry. But unlike Tano, Xanatos would still pack a hefty punch behind his blows, whether it be from his blade, fist, or foot. A testament of his strength can be seen in The Dark Rival, where Qui-Gon describes his strikes as sending shock up his entire arm. What's more, Qui-Gon knew he could not tire out his old apprentice, meaning that Xanatos had high levels of endurance. Despite that, it is still noted that during their first engagement, Xanatos was described as having sloppy footwork. His shoddy footwork is not mentioned further within the series, inferring he improved, but is still worth mentioning. Even so, Xanatos was a lively fighter with strength and endurance to back up his speed and haste.
Both Ahsoka and Xanatos were physical and speedy fighters.
Where they differed were in Ahsoka's heightened awareness and Xanatos' solid strength. Xanatos certainly had awareness of his own through the Force, but Tano had her natural biology coupled with her abilities in the Force to give her the edge. Ahsoka was strong enough to survive the Clone Wars, but Xanatos simply had more might and muscle than she did. For me personally, the slight edge goes to spatial awareness, as it is more practical in combat. Therefore, Ahsoka Tano gets the very minor edge in her physical attributes. Like her master before her, and his master before him, and his master before him, and even his master before him, Ahsoka Tano followed a long line of focused Jedi Guardians, specialized in combative dueling. Though she was a focused duelist, that did not deter her abilities with the Force. She used it primarily with her Force augmentation, as she would often leap and jump to outflank her opponents, but she was not reliant on it, as she could draw on the energies of youth. Her Force sense was immense, as she was able to sense Plo Koon's need for help from a great distance away. She was also competent with the typical Jedi mind trick. Most of all, she was adept in her use of telekinesis. This would make sense. Her mindset was combat-centric, and the use of telekinesis was often applied in combative situations. She was able to land Force pushes on Asajj Ventress and General Grievous, two warriors known for their evasive speed. In spite of all of that though, she still favored her blade in a majority of her fights. Much like Tano, Xanatos came from a long line of lightsaber duelists. Unlike Tano, Xanatos held more power with the Force, at least more power on the dark side of the Force. The height of his powers would be displayed in the Captive Temple, where he was able to cloak his Force signature from the entire temple, even Yoda. Yoda will later note how strong Xanatos was with the dark side of the Force. This does not necessarily mean that his use of the Force was greater than the Jedi Counselors, but it does showcase his potential with his Force abilities. Even so, he was merely a Dark Jedi, not a full-blown Sith, so abilities like Force Lightning and other Sith abilities were beyond his understanding. Though not a Sith, he still employed Force Rage, bolstering his feats for strength and speed. Yet his rage could get the better of him, making him sloppy. He also employed telekinesis strategically and utilized Force augmentation to enhance his physical attributes. Though most of his skill lied with its blade, Xanatos still held high levels of potential with the dark side of the Force. The deciding factor of this round lies more with potential than anything else. At a base level, both Tano and Xanatos were basic users of the Force. Neither were capable of masterful abilities such as Tuta Menace or Force Lightning, but both employed the tactics of simple powers like Force Push or Mind Tricks to supplement their skill set. They were more inclined to engage their opponents with their blades rather than with their telekinetic abilities. That being said, Xanatos has performed feats with the Force that have outshone Tano. The fact that he was able to cloak himself from the entire Jedi Temple is a testament to his Force potential, something that was only achieved before by Darth Xana. For this reason, Xanatos gets the edge in regards to his Force abilities.